Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show and the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison are here to talk some more trades, DynastyLeagueFootball.com. Addison uses the trade finder and the trade analyzer. I just show up and talk. I didn't even have to. I'm like, hey, man, do we have any ideas for today? He's like, I already got the show sheet done. I'm like, I love these days. Yes, I don't even have to think. I don't have to try and do anything. I just need to show up and look good and put words together to form sentences that sometimes actually make sense.
Sometimes.
And apparently
sometimes you start a sentence and then don't know where it ends up going. Just hope to find it along the way, you know?
Yeah. Don't need to know where it's going to end as long as I can see there's a path that gets me somewhere. Don't know where always, but apparently today we are talking buy low wide receivers, and I'm good with that because you know we love some wide receiver talk. So
yes,
I'm definitely down for this. Let's see who Addison thinks is a buy low wide receiver right now, because I have no idea.
The first one should come to no surprise.
I was about to say the first one's pretty obvious. Usually when you think of buy low players, it usually comes off of injury. And Rashee Rice officially out for the season, though I don't think they said exactly what was wrong. They just said he's out for the season.
It was just an LCL injury that he had to have surgically repaired, but I think they said maybe there was I think they said there was a little hamstring damage, but they didn't consider that to be any real issue. But there was no like ACL, no PCL, no meniscus. It was just straight LCL and a little hammy. That's about it.
So what you're telling me is my airbag theory was correct.
I think
his knee just went and protected those L's.
Everything. Yep. All the L's. Except for the LCL, but look, you had to lose one of them, you know.
It's the LCL. Come on, man. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. It's one of the ones. I don't know.
It's the List of the CLs. I mean, remember how we started about talking about knowing things that make sense? Oh,
yep.
Man.
Nope. This is where we're at.
All right, so let's talk Rashee Rice. Okay, but real first before we get into the trade, like, nothing's going to change for Rashee Rice coming into next year, right? What we saw at the beginning of the season will still most likely be his role. I think, if anything, maybe Kelsey hangs him up after this year, so maybe there's a little bit more of a I don't think Rashee Rice's value should be lower next season than it was a game or two into this season when we saw the role he was having.
Agreed. I think that he's still a top 12 dynasty wide receiver. Maybe he dropped a little bit in favor of some other guys like Drake London or Brian Thomas Jr. or maybe Jayden Reed, somebody like that. We're here for that too. But like, because those guys are at least healthy and they're playing right now. Yeah. So if you're competing, you want to move over to those guys. Absolutely. But like when healthy and when Rashee Rice comes back, I mean, he is the wide receiver one. He is fantastic. He's tied to Patrick Mahomes. What more could you possibly ask for? So if you could buy the injury dip now, that's just, I mean, you are setting yourself up for so many more fantasy points down the road from a dynasty perspective if you can manage to buy low on him right now.
And this first trade is super interesting to me because there's taking out the injury, two very similar situations. Let's get into it. 12-team, 1 quarterback. Rashee Rice and Dontavian Wicks for Jordan Addison in a 25 second. Let's talk about the values first. Rashee Rice, 535, Dontavian Wicks, 80 for a total of 615. Jordan Addison, 272. A second is 121 for a total of 392. So this heavily in favor. Again, it's always going to be a little tough. This isn't caught up to injury pricing just yet. They're not valued the same. Let's put that out there. But I think there's similar situations in just that you believe in the talent. It's just their off the field stuff that makes them a little iffy. Clearly, Rashee Rice going to be more involved in his offense than Addison will be in his because of a man named Justin Jefferson, which there's nothing you could really do about that. But also, Addison's still getting his looks. You know, Addison comes back from his injury and Jalen Naylor who? Like, you know, like he walked back in, he got his targets back. Like, I firmly believe in Addison's talent. We're not bringing Rashee Rice down to that 270 mark. Like, you still wanted him at the 600s before the injury. So maybe this is injury pricing for you.
Yeah. This is very easily the Rashee Rice side. I think trading away, I would even have done this without Dontavian Wicks. You just got a free Dontavian Wicks, which is fun. But Yeah, I mean, he should have done better. I think he's going to be a guy that the community just forever loves more than what he's actually going to be worth. But he's fun. But this is exactly how we should buy Rashee Rice. Like 1000%. This is what we should be doing.
I mean, the real truth of this, the real sentiment behind here is don't trade away the hurt player to replace the hurt player, because you're never going to get the value's worth. I mean, if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. But, you know, it's really best practice to try and trade away something else to make up for that hole. But also because that means you'll have, when you get that player back, you have an extra player. This is a key example of that. I really do like Addison. But Addison in a second for Rice probably makes sense. But easily for Rice.
What if it was like Chris Godwin? Is that still too low? Do you need more points?
But I do like the points, but that value feels too low.
What if it was Tyreek Hill?
Tua coming back.
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not trading for Tyreek Hill at all right now, like, because it's just not worth the risk of what that can turn into.
Yeah, and I also just don't think it's worth using Rashee Rice to do that either.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to go up to Tyreek Hill and try to buy low on him because of the Tua injury. I don't want to go down to Tyreek Hill and then maybe you get 5-6 games with Tua back as Tyreek Hill. Maybe he helps win you a championship, but then you go into next year and you're like, ah, crap. Like I traded Rashee Rice for a 32. Yeah, he's going to be 31.5 next year at this time. Tyreek Hill, which might still be good if Tua is playing, but I mean that the trajectories it's just going to look so horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is Rice. All right, so let's move on. 12 team, 2 quarterback, 1.5 tight end premium. Oh, wow. Okay, Rashee Rice and a 25 first for Travis Kelce, DeAndre Swift, Jameson Williams, Raheem Mostert. One more time. Rashee Rice and a 25 first. Rashee Rice, 373. The first is 370 for a total of 743. For Travis Kelce, DeAndre Swift, Jameson Williams, and Raheem Mostert. Kelce, 346. Swift, 127. Jameson, 105. Mostert, 27. 27 for a total of 605. This is so easily the Rashee Rice side. I get it. You're getting the points of Kelce now that he's actually catching the ball with Rashee Rice out. Swift having a nice little resurgence. Jameson doing pretty well.
He's lost target share every single week since week 1.
Yeah, week 1 isn't the reality. It's somewhere in between that and that 1-point game he had. It's somewhere in between there.
Yeah. He caught an 80-yard touchdown this past week, but that was like one of his only 2 catches. So
yeah,
that's kind of
and Raheem Mostert, a 32-year-old running back who knows what's going on with that anyway. Like, this is every aspect Rashee Rice in the first. Like, I get it. If I'm competing and I'm freaking out, you bought some points, but like none of this is points I feel great about besides Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, kudos on you for getting the first attached to this. I feel like I would have just taken the Rashee Rice by himself, or it'd have been like I'd be like, oh yeah, maybe I could get something coming back with Rice, but I wouldn't have shot for a first. No, I probably would have shot for, all right, toss me a second back, toss me, some other kind of younger wide receiver that could fit a more, long-term scale. I would not have gone for the first. So the fact that you went for the first, kudos to you. The fact that you got the first, more kudos to you. That's incredible. Because this is like I'd imagine this is almost half of a starting lineup, right? Where you get Kelce, Swift. You maybe thought Raheem Mostert was going to be a little bit more productive, but then he got hurt. JMO kind of came out, at least in the first 2 weeks, and looked really good, but hasn't really done much since. You've been underwhelmed by DeAndre Swift up to the last 2 weeks. You've been underwhelmed by Travis Kelce up until basically 2 nights ago. Yeah. If this was half of your starting lineup, more or less, you're probably 1-4, maybe you're 2-3 if you have other good pieces. And this is exactly what I would want to do, where I'm just pulling the plug on 2024. It was not meant to happen this year. How can I make 2025 and beyond so much better?
This is such a kickoff of a rebuild. Such a kickoff for a rebuild.
Yep. It might not even be like a rebuild. Like, I feel like rebuild
retooling for next year.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like rebuild insinuates 2-3 years down the road. Like, you could make this move depending on where that 25 first is, or if you draft really well, maybe you draft next year's Brian Thomas, or trade it away. Then you're competing, and depending on what the rest of your roster looks like too. Like this could be just a way to just, like I said, pull the plug on 2024, look at 2025, and you're on your way.
So I just scrolled down to see who our next player is, and apparently today is Let's Just Talk About Players Addison Likes Day.
It might be. It might be. But like, it's funny because I like all of these players more because I think that they're at really good prices for where they should not be.
All right, so let's talk about Jaylen Waddle for a second. Why don't you give us a little sales pitch on Jaylen
Waddle? Tua has been hurt, and Waddle sucks. But we know that Jaylen Waddle is so much better with Tua playing or with an actually competent quarterback that is not Tyler Huntley or Skylar Thompson. So what's a fantastic way to buy low on some future production is to buy low on players that have been hurt or are in bad situations. And that is what Rashee Rice and Jaylen Waddle are. Boom.
Jaylen Waddle, currently points per game, wide receiver 55 at 9.5 points per game.
Oof. Just wait till our next player. Then I want you to look up where his production is for the next.
Right on top of Calvin Ridley, number 56. Why did I make myself cry like that? I don't know why. I just did that to myself.
I'm sorry. Hey, but T. Higgins had a good week last week. So
2 touchdowns, baby. And then that jerk had to overshadow him by getting 2 touchdowns and more yards. Come on, Chase. Why? It was a T week. It was a T week.
It was a Bengals week.
It was a Bengals. It was that game. That was a week. That was
fun.
All right, so let's get to these trades. So 12-team Superflex, Jaylen Waddle and a 25 first for Dalton Kincaid and Jordan Mason. Jaylen Waddle, 502, 25 first, 370 for a total of 871. Dalton Kincaid, 321. Jordan Mason, still only at 61 for 382. No tight end premium. Man, if it was already the Waddle side in the first place, you just give it a violent shove. Are you giving a first for Mason right now?
No, definitely not.
And I'm taking Waddle over Kincaid.
I mean, there you go. Again, these are like, I'm not cherry picking these trades because I just want to show like how great it would be to go buy Jaylen Waddle for this kind of stuff. Like this is all over the place for Waddle, that like people are, they're seeing the production without Tua. They thought that they were going to get good production from him, and they're not. So they're trying to move off of him for other players, and they're looking at short-term assets like Jordan Mason. They're going to really old veteran wide receivers. They're trying to do all this other kind of stuff to hold on to their contending hopes. And this is exactly how you take advantage of doing something like that. Like Jordan Mason has been a fantastic asset for this year. Like I had him on a couple contending teams already, where now I just kind of have a really good RB1, and that's fantastic. But if you can move off of him at that kind of, somebody's buying an RB1 for fantasy because he is a temporary asset. CMC might be back in a month. We have no idea. And even if CMC's not back at all this year, but then is back next year, I don't see any longevity with Jordan Mason to where I would take a first over him, and I would take Jaylen Waddle over Dalton Kincaid, exactly like you said.
Mason, RB 11 points per game, 16.6. Doing pretty well. It's better than I thought.
Yeah. And he's not really receiving. He's not catching the ball either. He's not a receiving threat. So he's doing all that just strictly on the ground and scoring touchdowns.
All right. So let's go to this next trade because it is an interesting one. Garrett Wilson, Jaylen Waddle, and a late 25 first for an early 25 first and Jayden Reed. Whew. Now, are these actual picks, or is this Devy stuff that you're?
No, they are actual picks. The late 25 first. This is a league that I believe does like median scoring. So every week they have an extra win or loss.
Victory points.
If you scored above the median. So that 25 late first belongs to a team that's currently in second. They are 9-1, and the 25 early first on the opposite side is a team that's essentially second to last. They are 1-9. So like two completely opposite sides of the standings here.
Is there really 220 points between Jaylen Waddle and Jayden Reed?
No, I think most people would take Reed over Waddle at this point.
Worst case scenario, you're crossing them off.
Yes.
Garrett in a late first for an early first. I'm taking Garrett in the late first.
Yes.
And this is still 12-team Superflex, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I stick with that, especially because I will not take credit for, I've said this, but I won't take credit for the analysis of it because I can't remember who actually said it. But like Garrett Wilson just had a really rough start to schedule. Like with the defenses and cornerbacks he's been playing against, it might have been you, to be honest. I don't remember. I talked to so many people at this point that I just don't remember anymore.
Yeah, he faced some hardcore cornerbacks over the first 4 weeks.
And then apparently all he had to do was leave the country to finally start getting some receptions.
Is he Kyle Pitts of the wide receiver position? Maybe.
We like Kyle Pitts, so that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. But Garrett Wilson has looked great, and hopefully that stays.
Yeah, this, like, again, I really do like Jayden Reed. I'm a very big fan. I'm a very big fan of early firsts, but Garrett Wilson he's shown that he can do Garrett Wilson things in this offense, which isn't that great of an offense anyway. I believe in Jaylen Waddle as a player. That situation is very easily changed just by Tua coming back or by them getting a vet quarterback. And a first is a first. Like, I'm still happy with if it were a second, even if it was the 201, it would feel so much different than saying it's the 111 or 112. Again, it might be 1 or 2 picks, but there's a huge value difference between that 1 being the first number or the 2 being the first number. We're staying in the same round. And especially this early, we don't really know what that round looks like just yet. What we think 6 or 7 spots might be worth could be very different to what 6 and 7 spots might be worth. Of course, that works both ways, but I'm still leaning more towards saying that doesn't mean as much to me as it does dropping around. So this is, again, very easily the Wilson, Waddle, and first side.
Yep. I 100% agree. And to kind of to emphasize your point about, it is still better that it is, a late first instead of a second. That is a massive difference now in season, because while you might be projecting that is possibly, the 111, 112, this team's going to play for the championship, all it takes is 1 or 2 injuries to very key players on that team, and all of a sudden they are no longer as big of a championship contender. They might be a first round playoff exit team, like maybe they just missed the bye week because they have a couple players that got injured at kind of key moments. Then they lose in week 1. Now all of a sudden that's the 107, that's the 108. The difference between those firsts closes a little bit, and you can't do that with a second round pick. If that was the 201, 202, it's possible that the gap widens if that team produces slightly better than maybe what you were expecting if that's a second versus it being a first round pick. It can really only go down if you're just considering it being the 111, 112. The only question I have for you, Russ, is if I told you that was Tet McMillan on that side, Tet McMillan and Jayden Reed, does your personal bias come into that?
No, because I still have it. I have it for Garrett Wilson also.
Okay.
So here, like, imagine if that turns out to be like the 104 and the 108. Like, that's why I don't play this game.
Too. Yep.
Like, you're paying Garrett Wilson for 4 spots. Like,
yeah, I don't like playing the first round upgrade game, especially when you're using all these other kind of, elite or, kind of very good to stud assets to do that. Like, I don't mind doing the game when it's like, oh, I have my late first and I have this other piece and I can, I have like this maybe aging veteran or a temporary running back asset, and I can flip my late first and Zach Charbonnet for a team that currently is out of the playoffs and probably won't get in the playoffs. I'll play that game then, but I don't like playing that game when it's like a very big time deciding factor of the deal.
And all of these players are so young.
Yes.
24, 25.
Yeah.
Yeah. No reason for that. All right. Let's see who the third person is. Yeah. Tank Dell. Everything checks.
Buy a little wide receiver. Love to see it.
All right. So talk to us about Tank Dell.
He's fantastic. If you didn't know, Nico Collins is now officially on the injured reserve.
Yes.
And so I think that Tank Dell is going to slide right back into that wide receiver 2 role that he had last year with Nico, except now he'll just be with Stephon Diggs. It might be for a more temporary 4 games while Nico kind of comes back from his hamstring injury. But I think that we'll see a rise in value for Tank Dell because his production is going to rise up over the next month or so. And that'll probably carry itself into 2025, especially if the Texans decide not to re-sign Stephon Diggs, and then Dell kind of slides right back into that wide receiver 2 role that he had last year. So I would just love to buy Tank Dell right now. I'm also not even 100% sure that he's fully healthy. I think that's another thing that's kind of playing into this, is that he had that season-ending injury, which I believe was close to the season-ending injury that Tony Pollard had at the end of 2022, to where he said it took until like Thanksgiving 2023 before he started to feel healthy again.
Interesting.
And Tank Dell got shot in the leg in the summer.
Yes, he did.
So that also did happen. And which, side note, that that same injury is what Isaiah Pacheco has right now, what he's currently recovering from. So that's why I've kind of been off of Isaiah Pacheco from a 2024 standpoint, that he's a buy for 2025. Anyway, not the point. But yeah, I would love to buy Tank Dell right now because I think he's great. He's young and he's a little undervalued because he hasn't been producing.
Well, if you're telling me in a 12-team Superflex league, I could send Quentin Johnston and Bucky Irving to get Tank Dell, I would also be doing that.
God, it's so easy, dude.
Like, don't get me wrong. I love that Quentin Johnston is sort of a thing right now. I am loving it. Bucky Irving, I was a fan. Like, I this is what I saw happening the entire time. I don't think he's going to rise to what Rachaad White was last year, if I worded that correctly. Like last year, Rachaad White was like that mid-low end RB1 based on the volume. Bucky Irving's not going to get that volume because Rachaad White is still there and they still want to give him the ball for some reason, even though he's not doing great with it. But like Bucky Irving, I still think has the ability to produce as that high-end one, high-end 2, low-end 1.
Sure.
Because I think he has the talent to do with the amount of touches he gets. But give me Tank Dell. Give me that young wide receiver. Yeah, this is very easily Tank Dell. And I get that the 52 and the 50 don't really encapsulate maybe like what they're really being valued as. Like, I don't think anyone is really going out of their way to raise Quentin Johnston's value, even though, again, I think he's producing well enough to be worth it. But I think everyone is still too angry to do that.
Yes.
But I'm here for it. But this is so easily Tank Dell. Like, to the point where unless this is points per carry, I don't get it.
Even if you were to double both of Quentin Johnston and Bucky Irving's values, you're still 100 points short of Tank Dell.
Yeah,
that is what we like. We believe that to be a semi-depressed value of Tank Dell. So this is a perfect way of selling assets that have risen in value, and then you get to a tier or a level that you probably previously weren't going to be able to get to just because points are being scored or are not being scored in Tank Dell's case. But we know the talent, we know the situation could be better. And this is how you upgrade easily. Yeah.
Speaking of, Tank Dell and a second for DJ Moore. Tank Dell 292, a second is 111 for a total of 403. DJ Moore by himself 383. Is DJ Moore playing well enough for this to be worth it? I know he just had a good game this week, but
he's had double-digit fantasy points every single week. I did not recognize that until I looked at wide receiver scoring earlier in the week. But he's had double-digit PPR fantasy points every single week. He is the current wide receiver 14.
20 in points per game.
Yeah, 14 overall, 20 in points per game. So he's been solid. Like he's like that like 5 for 50, 5 for 60, kind of wide receiver.
He just happened to be coming off a game where he caught like a 40-yard touchdown.
I think he caught like 2 40-yard touchdowns.
Was it? Well, yeah, he put up 27.5 points, so he had a hell of a game.
Yeah. But I don't know. That was literally the exact question that I had in my head when I was putting this trade in. I was like, would I do this to go get DJ Moore? If I was competing and Tank Dell was like my wide receiver 4, and I was like, all right, let me upgrade him to get some extra production, would DJ Moore be my target?
Nope.
I don't think he would be. I feel like I could go higher, or maybe you really can't go higher with a second, but can I add something that's better than a second, or, to then go higher than DJ Moore?
DK Metcalf?
I would love that. I would love to go get DK Metcalf because he's also slightly younger. I would move over to T. Higgins. That would be like T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk, I think would be cheaper ways to go get the same production than DJ Moore. Because I feel like you could probably, or at least they're all pretty similar. Like I would pay Tank Dell in a second for T. Higgins. I would pay Tank Dell in a second for Ayuk.
And I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago or last week even. All right, well, that's my mom. She's getting muted. So I did an Outhouse challenge a few weeks ago. At this point, I can't remember how long ago it was anymore. Again, Outhouse challenge, by the way, is someone offers me a trade. I put it as a poll on Twitter. If the side I'm being offered wins, then I accept a trade. Someone offered me Tank Dell in a second for Brian Thomas Jr., and I cried as I had to hit accept on that one. Not that I don't like Tank Dell in a second. I just really like Brian Thomas Jr.
I feel like that trade does not get done this week after what BTJ did on Sunday. I think he's the KTC wide receiver 8 right now. BTJ. It's sexy. It's pretty. Yeah. So, but I think are we in agreement that DJ Moore just doesn't feel like enough?
Yes.
Is that on us? Is that just personal bias for us, or is that
no? Because he's not scoring well enough for. Like, okay, so here's the thing: even if points per game, DJ Moore is scoring the same as someone like DK Metcalf or T. Higgins. DK Metcalf and T. Higgins are there because of they have spike weeks. There are games where they put up multiple games where they'll put up 30 points. DJ Moore just happened to be playing against like the worst defense in the league and was able to do it.
Fair.
I think it's more likely that Metcalf and Higgins will continue to have spike weeks than DJ Moore will.
Would you do it for Olave? Because Olave is averaging 4 fewer points per game than DJ Moore is right now.
I can't. The Saints are crushing my soul when it comes to Chris Olave.
Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver 1.
Yep.
Would you do this for Godwin or Evans or?
I would do Dell straight up for them.
Deontay? I
would do Dell straight up for Deontay.
But you wouldn't add?
No.
You wouldn't really add?
No.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because then that weighs in the future for the production.
Yeah, there's age difference there.
Yeah. Not to mention that if you are competing and you're looking at Tank Dell and you're like, well, I haven't really gotten the production out of him. Remember, Nico Collins is on IR for the next 4 weeks. So you might be getting the production out of Tank Dell that you need now that Nico's out.
And don't forget, people are very what's in front of me right now. Wait 2 weeks, and when Tank Dell puts up 2 good games, it'll raise his value, even though it's very artificial.
Right. Exactly. And then maybe that's what gets you up to a Garrett Wilson or up to a Drake London or up to a Jayden Reed.
Where Dell in a second gets you so much more. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
I went to scroll to see who's next, but that was it. That's the end. We like our players. That seems to, I think that might be a problem.
We like the players that we have.
We like the players that we like. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been another episode of the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.